with the use of a graphing utility if possible, determine the left and right-hand limits of the following function as x approaches 0. And the function we have is f of x is equal to 3 times the sine of pi over x. If the function has a limit as x approaches 0, state it. And if not, discuss why there is no limit. Now before we begin, make sure your calculator is set to radian mode. And what we'll do is we'll look at exploring these 3 limits graphically. So go into your graphing feature and enter your function 3 times the sine of pi over x. And let's first graph the function on a domain of -2 to 2 so that we're near 0. And when we do, if we go ahead and allow the calculator to set the range, or we can, the range would be from -3 to 3, because we know sine is bounded from -1 to 1, and if you multiply it by 3, now sine is bounded from -3 to 3. But the graph you end up getting shows some oscillation as I near 0. Now I'm going to sketch this oscillation as I near 0, and notice that I'm oscillating between -3 to 3, and what I can't tell is if the graph goes through the origin or if the graph approaches some other value. So I'm going to now change the domain so I'm truly near 0. I'm going to change the domain that I graph so that I'll graph between -0.1 to 0.1. And again, when I do this, I'll label on my x-axis -0.1 to 0.1, and again on the y-axis I know the outputs will go between -3 and 3. But now as I explore the graph, I see the same oscillation. The graph almost seems to be oscillating from -3 to 3 in the same way it did a moment ago. So I'm going to think to myself as x approaches 0 that perhaps this function does not exist. I don't get close to a single output. If I was to graph it again and be even nearer to 0, just to reassure myself, from -0.01 to 0.01, and again I mark along my axis from -0.01 to +0.01, again I know the range will go from -3 to 3, I would think that if I did have a limit, I'd be able to see these functional values approach some output. But again, I see the same oscillation that I witnessed before. So as I near 0, I know that my left-hand and right-hand limits both don't exist. So let's go ahead and answer our question. What is the limit as x approaches 0 from the left of this function? Well, that would be does not exist. And what would be the limit as x approaches 0 from the right of this function? Again, that would be does not exist. And our two-sided limit as x approaches 0 for a function as well does not exist.